Hello everyone and welcome back to my opinion. And the Gujarat Titans have beaten the Punjab Kings by 6 wickets. This game went down to the last ball, and when the Titans needed 62 of 36 with 9 wickets in hand, I didn't envision the game going down to the wire as much as it did. And I think 3 overs in the second innings from the Punjab Kings pulled things back. The 15th, 16th and 18th over of the second innings made life a bit difficult for the Gujarat Titans towards the end. And 19 runs were required of the last over, with Rahul Tewatia hitting 2 sixes of the last 2 balls of the innings to win the game for the Gujarat Titans. And I'll get into the intricacies of the game as I go along, but first off, the starting 11s. Johnny Bairstow was included in the side in place of Bhanuka Rajapaksa for the Punjab Kings. And for this change, I think that you could go 2 ways about it. One, you wouldn't have thought too much of it if they'd gone with the same side as their previous game. And also, they would have realised that Johnny Bairstow is too good to be left out. I think the reason why they went with Rajapaksa in the third game is because of how well he went in the first 2 games. And it just shows where, had he not run himself out in that third game and really made use of how well he was hitting the ball, scored a 40-odd, let's say, there would have been less of a chance that he would have been replaced for this game. And also because they won the game in the previous game, if he had got a contribution, then there would have been more of a likelihood that he would have still retained his place. But I think that one single-digit score really gave them a gateway to play someone who they've always wanted to play from buying in the auction. Rajapaksa was going to be a backup, and so Johnny Bairstow in the side, you can understand the inclusion. And for the Gujarat Titans, 2 changes, 2 forced changes. Sai Sudarshan in for Vijay Shankar and Darshan Nalkande in for Varun. And the Gujarat Titans won the toss and chose to bowl first. Now, in my preview, I said that both teams would probably look to bat first and defend quite a decent score. And with the way the Punjab Kings won their previous game, and also with the way that the Gujarat Titans won their previous game as well, you thought that with the Gujarat Titans having the best bowling side in the competition, but also probably the most fragile batting lineup in the competition, you thought that if they had somehow got to a decent first innings score, they would trust their bowlers to defend this score. And for the Punjab Kings, with the way that on the same surface they defended 181 against the Chennai Super Kings with quite some ease, they would also have, even though they were batting first in this game after losing the toss, but they wouldn't have been too very perturbed by that either. And the first wicket to fall, Mayank Agarwal falling for 5 of 9 of the bowling of Hardik Pandya. Hardik Pandya in the last 2 games has taken the second over of the innings. He's got a wicket in both overs, and both in similar ways. I think really bowling that hard length, cramping the right-hander for room. In this case, Mayank Agarwal getting too much elevation, and the ball just pretty much went straight up in the air and was taken by Rashid Khan. And Hardik Pandya 1 for 10 in his first 2 overs that he bowled in the power play. Also, I think in the 9th over was on the cusp for taking a brilliant catch. He took the catch, but his foot touched the boundary rope. So I think with his bowling overall, there have been some real positives. Has been bowling around that 140 mark, and I think him taking the new ball still works in the side. I think especially with this attack today, with the inexperienced Darshan Nalkande, I think Hardik Pandya taking responsibility and also delivering in the power play is quite good for him and for Indian cricket. I think with the ball and the bat, he's been showing some really positive signs so far. And after this, the second wicket fell when Johnny Bairstow fell for 8 of 8 off the bowling of Lockie Ferguson. It was a good kind of a shortish delivery, hitting the glove first, then hitting the bat. So the pace being taken out of the delivery with the contact points, and the catch being taken at a short third man. A big wicket at that point because the run rate wasn't too high for the Punjab Kings. They were on 34 towards the end of the 5th over. And also with Johnny Bairstow and Mayank Agarwal dismissed, what happened is that, and I think with the last 2 games, it has kind of shown this, where you got this top 3 in this game with Mayank Agarwal, Shikhar Dhawan and Johnny Bairstow. And if you look at the players after them, Liam Livingstone, Jitesh Sharma, Odean Smith, Shah Rukh Khan, they seem to, especially with 3 of those, they seem to deal more in brute force. And I think with the other players, especially like Johnny Best, or someone who who has that same level of power as well, but there's a bit more responsibility to the way he plays and the sheer class of the openers as well. I think that if you're looking for a reliable source of runs, a consistent source of runs, I think yes, Mayank Agarwal hasn't had, apart from the 143 in the first innings, he hasn't had a great time of it in the last three of his innings, especially with the dismissals. You'd think that it's kind of mostly been it's kind of been his doing, but I still think that again, I'm not worried about him in the slightest. He's a quality player, and so with the top three, what you'll get is a bit more responsibility shown, and that's the reason why getting Agarwal and Johnny Bairstow out within the power play was certainly a huge boost for the Gujarat Titans. And as I get through the innings, and probably as I get through the innings, I'm sure that you'll get what I'm saying. When the top three, you probably get a bit more responsibility from, but not so much from the others to follow. And Johnny Bairstow dismissed, and just like in the game against CSK, Shikhar Dhawan and Liam Livingstone really getting that rescue partnership going for the Punjab Kings. Shikhar Dhawan once again playing second fiddle, 35 of 30 for him being dismissed by an excellent delivery from Rashid Khan that took the edge and he was caught behind. And Liam Livingstone was the aggressor, 64 of 27 all in all from him, an even more destructive innings than the one he played against CSK. And against this kind of an attack as well was a really good and an outstanding innings from Liam Livingstone. I'd said before that I wouldn't have been surprised if he wouldn't really live up to the 11 crore price tag. But two outstanding 50s in these two games. I'm happy that he's proven me wrong in these last two games, and it will be good for the Punjab Kings and himself as well if he does continue that. And yeah, I think that after what I'd said from especially from IPL 2020 as well, the second leg, and I don't think at that point I was wrong in saying what I said, because certainly it had taken 12 games to really give this kind of a performance in the IPL like he did in his previous game. But really well done from him in the last two games. And this really this got the run rate to above 8 and over and lasted for 52 runs until Dhawan was dismissed by Rashid Khan. There was another good partnership of 38 between Jitesh Sharma and Liam Livingstone. Jitesh Sharma didn't get the gloves today, but he was really impressive once again with 23 off 11 until he was dismissed by Darshan. In fact, before I say this, they really had a baseline. I thought they were 124 for 3 in 13 overs against this kind of an attack, and you thought that they were looking to get around that 200 score, and if they got that with a slightly fragile batting lineup and with a bowling attack that defended 180 odd against a batting out that looks really good on paper and scored 200 plus in their previous game, then they would have been confident defending a high total against this lineup, you thought. And just when they had that launch pad, a few dismissals that weren't necessary at all. Jitesh Sharma being dismissed by Darshan Nalkande, his first wicket of the IPL. You could say it was kind of in the slot. Jitesh Sharma didn't really get it off the bat too well. It went high, and it was one of those where I thought it was going for a boundary when he hit it, but very soon the distance wasn't. The ball didn't really get too much distance, and he was caught in the end of Shubman Gill. And the very next delivery, the same fielder taking the catch, and this is for Odean Smith. So I'm going to get to more in detail after I finish talking about both innings. He had a bit of a tough game today. And once again, there was a knuckle ball bowled by Darshan Nalkande. Near about the same length, but I just think because of that reduction in pace as well, Odean Smith, the bat turned in his hand and he was caught by the same fielder for a first ball duck. I think for Odean Smith, especially in the last two games, we've seen that, and even before then, we thought that 25 of 8 performance was something which is going to be the icing on the cake, basically. This wasn't going to be something that you were going to get most times. And whatever contribution he gave with the bat would be a bonus. And that's why when he walked out at number 6 to really score those quick runs at the end, you would have wanted him to fire at that point, but they would have known that they wouldn't be expecting the consistency level as of a, let's say, even a batting or rounder or a pure batsman. So I think with these, especially with the 3 off 7 against CSK and the one ball duck here, I think it's shown that it's not easy all the time, especially like he is a bowling all-rounder, and you can't really expect him to play these innings all the time. And in the same over when Shah Rukh Khan got out with a hoik across the line, LBW, after he hit 2 sixes off Mohammad Shami not so long ago, that over pretty much it had broken the foundation that the Punjab Kings had laid for themselves. Liam Livingstone being dismissed 2 overs later for a brilliant 64 of 27. Rashid Khan I think Rashid Khan taking the wicket of Shah Rukh Khan and Liam Livingstone as well. I think in separate overs, but he took both his wickets. 3 for 22 for him and 4, absolutely outstanding. And at that point, when you thought, you could say, actually no, he took them in the same over actually. 154 for 7 they were when Shah Rukh Khan was dismissed. And you thought, with him there, he was their only chance at that point after Livingstone was dismissed to get to 200 or close to that. And with him being dismissed in the same over, you thought that the Punjab Kings wouldn't get close to that. And the 8th wicket fell of Kagiso Rabada, an inexplicable run out, and Mohammad Shami uprooting the stumps of Vaibhav Arora. And afterwards, quite an unexpected partnership between Rahul Chahar and Arshdeep Singh. And with the last over of Hardik Pandya, I think he'd be quite disappointed. He'd bowled well up till then, 1 for 20 in his first 3 and 16 runs in the last over. I just thought that when, in a partnership for number, you could say, number 9 and number 11. That was who the partnership was between. 16 runs in the last over. He'll be disappointed with that. And 189 for 9 for the Punjab Kings from where they were. Still, in the end, quite a good score. They would have taken that. They would have, with the 124 for 3 platform, they would have wanted to achieve 200. But after losing those wickets, I think still 189 for 9, you could have done worse as a compromise. The bowling figures, for the most part, quite good. They pretty much all went, 4 of them, the main 4 went at under the overall run rate for the innings. The star of the show being Rashid Khan, 3 for 22 in his 4 overs, and got the wickets of Liam Livingstone and Shah Rukh Khan in the same over to really put the Punjab Kings in a bit of strife at that point. And the 2 bowlers who got a bit of tap were Rahul Tewatia, who really got some tap in that partnership in that 1 over that he bowled in the partnership between Jitesh Sharma and Liam Livingstone. And Darshan Nalkande is fairly inexperienced, 2 for 37 in his 3. Apart from those 2, everyone else went under the overall run rate of the innings. So they would have thought from the position that they had the Punjab Kings in, they wouldn't have wanted to. They would have thought conceding 100, letting them get to 190 runs, 189 runs from there, was a bit of a disappointment. But at the same time, I still think that they would have thought that it was going to take a lot to chase the score down, but they would have still had the belief that they could chase the score down. So first up, I mean, there was one aggressor in this innings ready for the majority. And that was Shubman Gill. I think from the very start it was Shubman Gill. 96 of 59 with 11 fours and 1 6. I mean, from the very start, some of the boundaries that he hit, I thought the shot of the power play, you could say, was that on drive that he hit of Arshdeep Singh when the ball just swung in slightly. And he got some assistance, some Sai Sudarshan and Hardik Pandya. I'll get to the innings in detail, but for someone who gave an impetus from the very beginning, Shubman Gill was absolutely outstanding once again. 96 of 59, and virtually didn't take a risk. Just like his previous innings, he didn't take a risk. And he's got 180 runs in 2 games now, and in the first game really being the backbone to get the Titans to a 170 score, and in this case being the backbone for a chase of 190. And so this has probably been, these 2 innings have been the best 2 innings I've seen him play in white ball cricket. And from the last season, I think from the last season, you kind of thought that with the strike rate he was going, I wasn't too kind of I think this wasn't a major issue in my view. Yes, you could say that, especially in the first half of last year's IPL, the strike rate wasn't exactly up there. But I still think that in the second half, he played some really integral innings to get them through the knockout phases with a 50 in the final. So in fact, actually ended off that tournament with a really good run of scores. And he's really he's carried on from there with 2 outstanding innings in in these last two games, 180 runs in these two games, and that too with such high strike rates as well. So really well done from him. They're gonna need him, Hardik Pandya, and Matthew Wade to fire more often than not, at least 2 out of those 3. Because yes, Sai Sudarshan played well today, but the batting app still looks a bit fragile in my view. But so far, three games, 3 wins, and really well done from them. Matthew Wade was dismissed off the bowling of Kagiso Rabada. An excellent delivery, just angling away. And so far, he got a 30-odd in the first game, which even then that didn't really have the strike rate. So Matthew Wade hasn't exactly come to the party so far. But I think they should still keep him in the side because if you look at the replacement, you have Ridhiman Saha, and who I think compared to Matthew Wade, he would be a bit more of a hit and miss in this format. I think that sometimes he can give you that really good start. Other times, especially when you bowl short to him, he can struggle. So, and also Rahmanullah Gurbaz, I still don't think I think this level would be a bit of a step up for him. He's kind of those players where he really goes hard from the get-go. If it comes off, it's great. If it doesn't come off, then he just gets out. And I think the consistency factor is something which he hasn't really got much. I mean, he played some good innings in the T10, but I think a step up from there to here will be a huge ask. So I think they should just rely on Matthew Wade to come good because he is one of the best batsmen in this side, and him, Shubman Gill and Hardik Pandya are gonna have to really provide that platform to then for either themselves to launch off or the other players like David Miller and Rahul Tewatia to launch off. So that's on him. So I know he hasn't necessarily come to the party in these first 3 games, but then the team has won on all 3 occasions. So I think that you don't really have too many reasons. You don't really have a reason to change the side. And also the fact is, if you look at the replacements that you have, the backups that you have, Matthew Wade is comfortably better in this format than both of those. And so he was dismissed. And a partnership of 101 between Shubman Gill and Sai Sudarshan. Sai Sudarshan, he played really well for, I think he was on 22 or 15 and overall scored 35 of 30. I think the one thing for him would have been he kind of slowed down a bit, 13 of the next 15 deliveries, I think. But all in all, for his debut innings, I thought he played really well. He had a great time of things in the TMPL, and that's why he was picked for this tournament. In fact, they actually interviewed someone who I think it had said he was a spin bowling coach, but he was also part of the scouting group, and he had scouted Sai Sudarshan before for something else. So I think that for a debut innings, he played really well. But one thing that did was, if you look at these 3 players here, Shubman Gill, Sai Sudarshan, and Hardik Pandya. Shubman Gill was once 83 of 47. He then scores 13 runs of his next 12 balls. Sai Sudarshan, 13 runs of his last 15 balls. And Hardik Pandya started off 14 of 9, I think. But then afterwards, he scored, I think, 3 runs off his next 5 balls at an integral time. And yes, they bowled well to him as well, especially Arshdeep Singh in that, I think... Arshdeep Singh in the when... I can't remember what over it was. It was just before Rabada's over. I think it was in the third last over of the game. And if you're looking at all those innings, they have slowed down at some point, and especially when they did 62 of 36 with 9 wickets in hand. Yes, it was manageable at that point, but with the coincidental slowing down of a Shubman Gill and a Sai Sudarshan, it made life a bit more difficult. Punjab got some good overs in the 15th, 16th and 18th, like I said, and because of that, they ended up only scoring 30 runs on the next 24 balls, needing 32 of 12 balls to win. And I thought they could have got a bit more off that last over from Kagiso Rabada. Again, half of the over was good, and half, especially the wicket of Shubman Gill, he deserved 100. It was kind of a full toss wide outside off stump. And there may have been a chance to say if he had left that ball alone. I know he moved across a little bit, but that ball was still quite wide. So there may have been a chance that if he had left that ball alone, it may have been given away. He went for it though, and it could have still been hit for a boundary, but in the end it was caught by the fielder in the infield. So a wonderful innings from Shubman Gill, but that only put more pressure on the Gujarat Titans. They needed 19 runs off the last over, and it didn't help that David Miller took the single, especially at that point, because the set batsman Hardik Pandya didn't get to face the first delivery of the last over. And the first ball was a wide from Odin. In fact, I'll get to Odin. In fact, probably after I talk about this last over, I will spend a bit of time talking about Odin Smith, because the first ball was a wide, and then the second ball was a good delivery, and David Miller, you could say, look, Hardik Pandya wasn't too happy when his run out, but like Gavaskar said, at the same time, yes, from what Simon Dool said in the previous over, Hardik Pandya should have been on strike for this over, but also Hardik Pandya did run when David Miller ran in the first legal delivery of this over. So actually, it wasn't entirely David Miller's fault at that point, but with the set batsman being dismissed, you thought that it was more the Punjab Kings game at this point. But I think with the bowler bowling, the fact is that he is a work in progress in this format, and especially with what I saw of him in the ODIs against India, especially in one of those games, when he hit a length and he wasn't really under pressure in terms of the batsman going after him, when he was dictating terms, I think he was much better. You could say kind of you saw that with Prasidh Krishna in the same series as well. I think you could say the same about Odin Smith. Well, you could say elements of that are also the same with Odin Smith, and considering if he just hits a length and he's not really under pressure to be scored off, then he delivers a kind of performance like he did in one of those games in the ODI series. But when there is kind of a pressure of him potentially being expensive, then defending even 19 runs of the last over was going to be quite a test for him, because it was Hardik Pandya, David Miller at the crease, and then Tewatiya to come. Manohar can also really hits a few as well, and Rashid Khan as well. So you could say for 19 runs, you really thought that Hardik Pandya should probably get them home. In the end, he was dismissed, but despite the fact that there was some batting to come, and you could say, despite the fact that even with the batting to come, you could say it was in the Punjab Kings' hands, it was a big test for Odin Smith, who had to defend 19 in this over, which for most other bowlers who are a bit more confident in their game at this point in time, you could say you'd put, despite the fact that they were bowling to power hitters, you could say that it would put the bowling side a bit more in front of the stage. But with Odin Smith, there was always a risk. And in the end, with this last two balls, it showed. And even before that, in the third ball of the in the fourth ball of the over, he could have easily just not thrown the ball at the stumps, and because he missed the direct hit, they were able to run one, and the game would have been at a super over if he hadn't thrown that. You could say 13 off 2. If they'd hit those 2 sixes, then it would have been in the super over. But now you've got a case where 2 sixes and it could be a win. You still thought it was quite unlikely at the stage of the Gujarat Titans to win, but you still thought with the batsman who was batting there and the inexperience of Odin Smith, you thought anything was possible. 2 deliveries of Rahul Tewatia, slightly moving outside the off stump and hitting the ball over the kind of the long on area for 6. And in the end, Gujarat Titans winning the game. And 3 games for them, and they've won all 3. And especially with what it seemed like from their auction performance with their frail batting lineup, I still think it is a bit frail. But in their 3 games, they've chased down a total in their first game. They put 170 and then they let their bowling defend it. And they chased down 190 in this game as well, against an attack which dismantled CSK the previous game. So really well done from them. Shubman Gill in the last 2 games has been absolutely magnificent. Hardik Pandya with a bat and ball has showed some real positive signs, I think. And Tewatia, the second game out of 3, where he's really played a good hand, especially in this game, 13 off 3, and he wins the game for really closes out the game for his team. So a lot of positives for the Gujarat Titans. I want to talk about Odin Smith, because I think we've seen with his bowling, especially we've seen 3 times now, the 52 runs given against RCB, the 30 run over against KKR, and also this over against the Gujarat Titans, where I think that he is a bit of a work in progress, and he does, and he's mostly seemed the kind to go on the expensive side. And if you're weighing up his batting with his bowling, he's still not at the consistency level to expect those quick fire knocks in every game or most games. I think that certainly we've seen that in the last two innings against CSK and with this one. And if you're looking at what the Punjab Kings need more, they need him to fire in the bowling more. Because while I said Odean Smith is the fourth seamer, which he is, you've got in this game Rabada, Chahar, Vaibhav Arora, and Ashdeep Singh. And the other two bowlers that you would bowl as bowling options are Liam Livingstone and Odean Smith. And in these conditions, so far in the 4 games that they've played, Liam Livingstone has been successful in one game against CSK, and apart from that, he's gone in excess of 10 runs per over. In fact, I think apart from that CSK game, he has gone for 39 runs in 2.3 overs. So they're still going to have to rely on Odean Smith's overs quite a bit. And in this game, for example, Liam Livingstone only bowled 1 over in the game. So the more overs they bowl of Odean Smith, and if he's expensive, the more it will affect how the kind of the 4 of the bowlers, you wouldn't really mind how they go. You would think that they would manage themselves, but with that 5th bowler, there'll always be a kind of a bit of a nervousness to see how they would go. And in this case, that was something that did lose them the game in the end. And with his batting as well, as I've said, 0 of 1 in this game. You never really expected those consistent contributions from him, and so for this team, it's more important that he bowls well to a satisfactory degree, whether he bowls 2 or 3 overs every innings, or maybe has to bowl 4 overs a few times. He's going to have to make sure that he doesn't kind of have figures that are as expensive, because it really does affect how the side goes. And you'd want him, and if he's not really firing with the bat either, and he's giving a lot of runs with the ball, it is a bit of a weak link that the Punjab Kings would have, and they wouldn't want this flaring up in every game or most games. I know he's still learning, but at the same time, again, the Punjab Kings are probably going to have to be mindful of how he goes. I thought Mangarawal was quite good in his post-match interview. He said that, again, it's okay, players do have these bad days, and we do back the players all the way. So again, it is something that most people would have said, but it is still a good thing to say. And with Mangarawal, I think that he does mean that. So again, I think that they would want to play Odean Smith because of what he could offer. I think you saw a glimpse of that against CSK when he bowled the short ball to Ambati Radu. It was a case where Punjab are on the front foot, and you could bowl Odean Smith in a situation where he'd be more comfortable in. You'd think that he had a bit more faith in thinking, right, I wouldn't be attacked as much. Let me just hit that hard length and see what happens. And he got a wicket. So I think that in a situation of comfort, like in one of the games in the ODI series against India, where he really bowled well, I think that in that situation, you get the best out of Odean Smith. But with the runs involved in this tournament in quite a few occasions, you'd think that his bowling would be under the scanner quite a few times, and with his batting, he hasn't exactly got into the position where he'd consistently be providing those cameos. So that is something which they're going to have to think about. So that was on this game, and tomorrow I think will be probably the most influential day of the tournament, and I think that Mumbai Indians, CSK, Sunrisers Hyderabad, I think that if they don't win tomorrow, you probably think that for the most part it is their flight ticket stamped for going home, you would say. I know mathematically they'll all still be in it, but you look at the Mumbai Indians. I'm going to start with CSK against Sunrisers first. Now, the reason why I think CSK have an advantage is because of the thing that I said in my previous video reviewing their game against the Punjab Kings, is that they have clarity. Now, their batting lineup, I don't think that the first game and the third game were accurate representations of how it would go throughout the tournament. And their bowling finally fired in the previous game against an explosive batting lineup. And also regarding, and for SRH as well, I think their bowling has been good. Yes, they conceded 200 in their first game, but their bowling in their previous game was good on the whole. But the one thing CSK have more of an advantage in is the fact that you probably think their batting unit is going much better than SRH's. I think that if Williamson gets out early, the others don't really seem to have that there doesn't really seem to be the mental side for them to really get over the line. A game which they should have won the previous game, and yet they couldn't get over the line. So Williamson's wicket is key for them. Apparently when he got out, it was a no ball because of the field that was placed. I think an extra fielder outside the 30-yard circle. So then in that case, 2 unlucky dismissals for him in these first 2 games. But I think that, yeah, Williamson's wicket is key for the Sunrisers' batting effort. They have some talented players, but I think the focal point is him. And so because of the extra clarity CSK have, you'd think however good the Sunrisers' bowling attack is, the CSK batsmen would be better placed to play them. And if the Sunrisers pretend, I think the best chance for CSK to win would be the best thing to do for both sides really is to bat first, get some runs on the board, and then you never know what happens next. But even then, I think if CSK bat first and get the runs on the board, with what SRH has shown, especially in their latest game, I think CSK do have quite... for me, they are quite the favourites to win that game, but let's see how that game goes. And for RCB versus the Mumbai Indians, I think for RCB, they don't have this standout kind of bowler, like for example, a Chakravarti, Narayan, Ashwin, Chahal. They don't have that kind of a duo or even one bowler that can own one phase of the innings. But I think if you look at a team like, if you put them up against a KKR, against the Mumbai Indians and a Rajasthan Royals, you could say, they have something where they can be in the game for longer than those teams can. I think with the death bowling of, for example, Rajasthan Royals and a KKR, and you saw against the Mumbai Indians where they were 83 for 3 and yet they could still get so many runs off the death bowling for KKR. CSK were 84 for 5 and 17 and still they get 47 runs off the last 3. For RCB, they haven't got that player that can own certain phases of the game, but they've certainly, with Maxwell and Hazelwood coming back, have got quite a bit of an improvement to their side, you'd think. Hazelwood, Harshal Patel, Hasaranga, that's quite a decent, very good 3 bowlers. Whatever you get off Siraj, and there's Akashdeep as well. So overall, you'd think they'll be able to stay in the game for longer than some of the other sides that I've mentioned. And that's the reason why I think that's the one thing the Mumbai Indians don't exactly have as well. You've got Bumrah and Timur Mills, but... with the other bowlers, you don't exactly know what they're going to do. Basil Tampi bowled well the previous game. You don't exactly know what he's going to do in the next game, pretend. For Daniel Sams, 2 out of 3 games, he has given a lot of runs and really dealt the decisive blow in for his side in 2 out of these 3 games. And also, I think, as I said, in not too much of a sample size, he has an economy rate of 12 and over in international cricket. It was always going to be a volatile buy for them. And there was always going to be a case of how many runs would he go for. And with Mills even having a slight bit of an off day, what happens is the onus is on Bumrah fully. They're facing up against a very good batting lineup in RCB. So you'd think that RCB would be able to compete for longer in the game. So I'm going for an RCB win. And yeah, Mumbai Indians, 4th loss for them. Things aren't going too well, but let's see how that goes. And just before I finish up, I'd like to say for the Punjab Kings as well, what I said about Agarwal, Shikhar Dhawan and Johnny Bairstow, I think they are more... again, the responsibility is centered around them, I think, because if you look at Livingston, yes, he played really well the last 2 games, but Jitesh Sharma, Odain Smith, Shah Rukh Khan, the way they threw their wickets away today, I think that's something the Punjab Kings maybe are going to have to work on. They've got a lot of power, but that power needs application as well. And if Odain Smith and Shah Rukh Khan don't really get those innings going for them, especially Shah Rukh Khan, then they may have a bit of a case where they don't exactly get that kick, despite the fact that they've had the top order play so well to get them that foundation. So that's on them as well, but let's see how the next 2 games tomorrow go. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, please share this video with your friends, and remember, this is my opinion, what's yours?